Yes, 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 it is a Monday morning. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the Let's There's Be Some Talks. Let's There Be's. Monday, June 29th, 2020. Thank you so much for joining me here on another episode, and a very, very special episode. I realize something as I get older, that how much friendship really kind of means to a human soul. It's funny when you have an old friend that you haven't seen in years. The floodgate of emotions when you see this person or talk to this person on the phone or anything, it's wild. It really makes me feel alive. And you never know why you kind of lose track of old friends. But during the COVID, I realized we have nothing but time, and we should reach out and find these people that at one time in your life meant something to you and give them a ring. And that's what I decided to do a couple days ago when I reached out to an old friend of mine, Jimmy Arceneaux. I've talked about it many times over the 9 years of this podcast that when I was very young, I used to book a rock club in San Francisco. And a matter of fact, I was involved in booking 4 clubs: the Stone, the Omni, the One Step Beyond, and the Cadillac Club, all in California. My partner and good friend, Jimmy Arceneaux, sat across from me in Oakland, California, and for 4 years, we had one of the most stressful gigs a early 20-something-year-old could have. Lots of stress involved in. It was like gambling. Gonna book this band, they're gonna get this amount of money. Holy shit, that gig tanked. And then the owners are right there at you, like, what happened with that show? But there was many, many nights where we hit gold, and it was all because we loved music, and we had our, as corny as this sounds, finger on the pulse, and we loved what we did. There was a double-edged sword, because here you are, this artist playing music. Jimmy and I both had bands, but then we were on the other side of the fence. And that was an interesting responsibility and dilemma to have. Are you an artist or are you in the business? And you got to figure out which one you are. Thank God Jimmy and I were both, because as we got older and you deal with business in the art world, you're not what I call a rock dummy. One of those people that are like, yeah, I don't know, man. It looks good to me. Just get me a tour bus and I'm fucking rock and roll. Those people are what I call the tumbleweeds, blowing around going, what happened? Somebody one time said to me, they said, if you question stuff about the business, you're going to be labeled difficult to work with. And that is hilarious, because what that really means is, they can't rob you as easy as they're used to. Jimmy and I had an amazing 4-year run. I missed the man more than I could even explain. And especially as I sat there and looked across the computer screen while we were Zoom recording, I was just, everything was coming back to me. Those days and of us, just the two of us. And thank you, Jimmy, so much for doing the show. And thank you all for tuning in. I think you're going to enjoy this one. There are some insane rock and roll business stories. The behind the curtain kind of stuff. Before I bring Jimmy on, let's do a quick big love to the new Patreoners. If you join Patreon, I'm going to give you a heads up. I've been doing these Zoom get-togethers. I call them the Zoom Fest on Saturday nights for the Patreoners. And I hang out on Zoom for a couple hours. Talk about music, films, whatever questions you have, back episodes, all that stuff. And I've been loving it because there's nothing better than seeing your fans out there, and they're just fired up to be hanging out on a Saturday night during these weird times. New Patreoners: David Brose, Greg Scott Dulberg, Troy Igabrod, Pedro MS, Patrick Dominic Jr., Steve Hodgson, Matthias Kinna, Darren Shroom, and the China Rider. Good name, China Rider. Heads up, there is a fake Instagram account out there, Dean Del Rey 23. Instagram has a serious problem. If there's a fake account and you report it, it's a fake account. Somebody imitating me. I'm like, hey, somebody imitating me. All kinds of fans were reporting it, and they were getting back to the fans saying, we see no rules being broke here. It's like, hey, assholes. Anyway, they made the fake account, and then they're reaching out saying, hey, it's Dean Del Rey. My mom's got breast cancer, and my dad's legs are broken. Just total dumb shit. And then it said, and I haven't eaten in weeks. Could you donate $50? Fucking people, man. Anyway, if you see that on Instagram, Dean Del Rey 23, report it and block them. All right, I love all you guys. Let's get into it right here. Have a great week. Get ready for that 4th of July. Nope. Nothing going to change on 4th of July. We have fireworks every fucking night now for about 6 hours. Here he is, my man, Jimmy Arceneaux. Oh, yeah. Look at this guy, Jimmy Arceneaux, on the podcast. I have not talked to you in, 25 years?
Yeah, at least that. Maybe 30.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so nuts. How old are you now?
Fuck. I just turned 58 on June 21st.
58 years old.
58 years old.
We're old, buddy.
Dude.
Can you believe it?
I can't. I really can't. And I keep telling my friends that as well. It's like, I don't get it. I don't even really even feel my age most days, you know?
Yeah. 58. Now, where are you living?
San Jose, California.
Yeah. And now let's give a little background here. We've known each other. What do you think? 35 years?
Yeah, probably about that. Yeah. Right.
I can't believe it, man. I've been wanting to talk to you forever, and every time I was up there, we didn't get it set up. So now, during the course of the COVID, I was like, all right, I got to get this guy on. Now, let's run it down. We met years ago, of course, in the rock scene, and then we ended up working together for years, booking these clubs, the Stone, the Omni, the One Step Beyond, and the Cadillac Club in Fresno.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I remember when I came on board, we were downstairs at the Omni in the basement.
Yes.
Remember?
Yeah.
And it was so funny because I did not know how to work a computer. And so I would have to like bribe you with lunch and stuff to print up tickets for me and contracts.
Amazing.
And if you were in a bad mood, you'd be like, "You gotta learn."
Like I was ever in a bad mood? Come on now.
It's so funny to think though, because like I am a whiz on the computer and everything now over these years. I just couldn't grasp the early days of the PC world. You know, the PC computer.
Right.
And you know, once you get on Apple, I don't know what you're on now, but you're on Apple. You're like, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah. I'm an Apple guy for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So I kept all my calendars, and I've had them ever since. And
Nice.
I recently went through. Do you know the bands we were booking, dude?
Dude, so it's funny you would say that. I actually have a few of my calendar pages from the old days as well. What blows my mind these days, there's this cat named Ron Quintana. You may know him. He's connected with the Metallica Cats and
Yep.
Bay Area music scene guy forever. And he posts ads out of band magazines. I forgot we booked Run DMC at all three clubs. Like,
Yeah.
we,
Yeah.
we booked Run DMC. Like, I forgot about how do you forget about booking Run DMC, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, legends, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I think that, first of all, it was so long ago. But then, as I look through the calendar, yeah, you're looking through it and you're going like, oh, wow, okay. Like, I just looked at it. We had Caius 2 nights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Caius.
Yeah.
Dude, we had, and I talked to Pauly Shore about this. We had Pauly Shore and the Spin Doctors.
I know.
And I'm just naming off weird stuff because later in life, you know, I become friends with Josh Homme, and I'm like, dude, I booked you guys when I was like a kid.
Yeah.
You know? It's so wild. I saw, you know, we had Danzig,
Yeah.
you know, Kiss. Remember when we had
Yeah.
Kiss?
Unbelievable. I got thrown off the stage by Gene Simmons himself.
It's so wild to think about these bands that played the clubs and later became massive groups. You know,
For real.
We had Rob Zombie,
Yeah.
White Zombie. You know,
Yeah, the original lineup.
it was crazy back then, right?
Yeah, it was something that'll never probably happen again, sadly. That era of bigness, as you used to call it, Higgs, huge industry giants. It's just a different world now, man.
Yeah, it really is. And of course, you were in a band, Soldier,
Yeah.
and I was in a band, and we would play all these gigs there all the time.
Yeah.
And you know, it's really a wild time to think about. You know, 4 nightclubs that were a lot of times just completely sold out. It's crazy, right?
Do you remember the weekend that we opened the One Step Beyond, and our 2 first shows were the first night it was Tower of Power,
Tower of Power.
and the next night was Primus, and Primus was well beyond our room, but agreed to play for us because we had been involved with them for so many years. They kind of did us a favor and played that first night. We did 1,600 and something people the night that Primus played there.
And that room was crazy. Remember, you could shut a wall and make it a half a room.
Yeah.
That was so bizarre. I've got somebody just sent me this, so let me look at it real quick. Check out this. Somebody sent me this over, and I love just looking at. This is the month of June. Okay. So what I really love about this is I did a Thrash January, where I paid tribute to all the great thrash bands in the Bay Area.
I saw that. I watched that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so look at this. In just a couple week period, we had King's X, your favorite,
Yeah.
Tony McAlpine, Violence, Vane,
Oh, shit.
Gamma,
Jeez.
Rollins Band. Dude, Rollins Band.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Skank and Pickle,
Oh, jeez.
MC Light, and Galactic Cowboys.
Yeah.
Forbidden, Roxanne,
Dude.
Fungo Mungo. That's like a couple week period at the clubs.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy, right? I mean, we got so lucky and I was so blown away with the shows that we got to pull apart, man. It was like good times.
It's really wild to think about what we learned in there too. The other side of the business. Here we are, two rock and rollers playing in a band. Did you ever get the idea once we're on the other side of like, well, there's not really much, these guys are huge and they're playing our rooms. There's not much money in this,
Right.
When you start looking at the deals and the agents and the managers cutting everything, you're like, hey, how are these guys making any money?
Right. Yeah. It was kind of a rude awakening, probably for both of us.
Well, it's just kind of like we're on the other side.
Yeah.
But man, did we learn some shit, huh?
No, dude. I mean, there's things I learned in the nightclub that I still apply to this very day,
Like what?
Well, like my head's always on a swivel whenever I'm out in public. The security aspect of a nightclub. Like, it's funny when my friends notice, like, the minute I walk into a space, I'm instantly casing the way in and the way out and looking around for suspect characters. It's like that's kind of the MO, one of the, I still apply. The one thing I learned from Yatsik and maybe a little bit Toby as well was, whenever an agent calls about a band, you were usually told to offer half of what they were asking for and then work up into the number that you wanted to happen. That still kind of applies to this day and age.
Yeah. It would be funny because we're a serious, we had 4 rooms.
Yeah.
And we were serious. They needed to play these rooms. We were a huge market. And it was funny to think how sometimes the agents would come at us with these insane offer, like, we want to come in for 60 grand. It's like, dude, this is like 1992. We can't have 100 tickets, $100 ticket back then,
Right. And, it's funny, too, because a lot of guys, I mean, I'm going to be brutally honest, and this is going to be hard for a lot of our contemporaries to hear, but we were booking bands that clubs in San Francisco wouldn't touch with a 10-foot pole because they were being San Francisco. They were artsy, except for the Stone. It was a rock and roll house. So, we could afford to go after Little Caesar and put them into a pocket where they made enough money that they were happy at the end of the day anyway. Whereas, at times like that, Slims and DNA and all those clubs were turning their nose up at rock and roll anyway. So we kind of monopolized the Bay Area scene for quite a while.
Yeah, we got really lucky because you and I loved music and we seriously had our finger on the pulse.
Yeah.
I remember specifically talking to Jerry Cantrell about how that Real Rock Club stole Alice in Chains from us because we wanted them.
Yeah.
And they offered them crazy amount, and then they went out of business that day.
Yeah.
You and I booked them at the Omni.
Yeah.
With Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
Who was Mookie Blaylock.
Right.
Called everyone we knew and said, get down here. And we had about, 50, 100 people, but they got to play.
Yeah.
And that's history.
Do you remember? So, dude, I have so many. I have so many fucking stories with you. One of my favorites is, and it popped up the minute you said you wanted to do this today. There's several that popped into my head, but this is the first one. Was we were watching them sound check. Their front of house guy had the biggest rig we'd ever seen, and he insisted on putting it on the floor. Remember?
Yeah.
And I mean, it was like a spaceship. And you and I rolled out. And it was our first time physically seeing Alice in Chains, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely.
And they were sound checking, and Lane had a button sewn into one of his dreads, and what's his face on guitar was doing something very strange, and you leaned over, and he stopped right as you leaned over my ear, and you said something that had nothing, Cantrell, it had nothing to do with Cantrell, and he goes, "What was that, bro?" And you started cracking up, which kind of sent him into like a little bit of a mini orbit until we went, "Look, dude, we're the talent buyers here. We're not just randoms. We weren't even talking about you." "Oh, okay, it was all cool then," but it was like he misheard something. It was like I was like, "Man, are we gonna have to break Jerry Cantrell in the Omni?" Just
it's classic, man. It is classic. It was a wild ride, you know. So much work put into. Like what you and I did, man. We would work 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
And then we would go rehearse with our bands. Every night we would rehearse.
Yeah.
Until like midnight. And then get ready for that gig every month. You know what? Back then, it was so weird. Bands played once a month. You didn't want to overplay.
Right. Well, it was smarter back then.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, you know, and not to mention that you had to go out and flyer all the time. You had to be seen, because if you weren't seen, then you got disconnected from the cliques, and just all of the psycho antics of rock and roll. Like, it all went into one nutbag. So it's like, you know, you and I booking a rock and roll club and having to be there in the morning time when we're normally used to sleeping until noon. It was like, it was culture shock for us for many years. I mean, it's still to this day, it's like, you know, now I'm the exact opposite, oddly, and I don't really like it very much. I'd love to sleep till noon.
I know, right? I get up at like 8. I try to sleep.
Yeah.
What is that?
I don't know. It's like some old thing that happens. I mean, I've even gotten to the point where now I'm of an age where I'm sometimes, like, I'm getting very little sleep these days, especially, but I'm like getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and I just went to bed at 2. It's like, are you kidding me right now? Like, that's it, you know?
Yeah. I remember a funny story about you. Like, you started smoking cigarettes at like 30.
33 years old. Yeah. And I still to this day smoke. Thank you very much. On occasion. But
it's so funny, right? All of a sudden I look at you. We had that big sliding door.
Yeah.
And I go, "You smoke?" Because I had quit, and you go, just once in a while.
Yeah. Do you remember how that happened?
I don't.
So we booked the original lineup of the Lynch Mob at all 3 rooms.
Right.
In fact, I just told a funny story about the One Step show on Facebook the other day, but it was a big deal, and I was super excited because I'm a big Lynch head. You and I were at all 3 shows. It was amazing. And then I rolled up to Pete Dockendorf's fucking front of house mix position, and there's a pack of shitty, like, Lucky Strikes or something. Parliaments. That's right. And I go, "Are these yours?" And he's all, "No." And I guess he was joking. And I go, "Well, they're mine now." And I took the pack and opened it up and like pulled one out and asked him for a light. And he's looking at me like going, "Is this for real right now?" And I started smoking the cigarette. And by the next day, I had to go buy a pack of smokes.
I couldn't believe it, actually. I'd never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
Now, let's get into you, Jimmy. You grew up in Albuquerque, is that right? I can't remember.
El Paso, Texas.
El Paso, Texas.
Yeah.
And at what point do you move to the Bay Area? Because I just kind of meet you in the rock scene, of course.
Yeah.
But so what year do you move to San Francisco? And was it like, we're going to bring the band out there and we're going to get it going?
Well, no, let me try and make it shorter than it is. In 81, I graduated from high school. I went on tour with Young American Showcase out of St. Petersburg, Florida, where we did assembly programs. We did top 40 rock and roll songs with comedy. I did all the comedy, and we did, 3 to 5 shows a day. So I did 600 shows a year for 2 years.
You were doing comedy?
Yeah. Well, in the middle of the show, we'd break down, and there was this thing on the first tour I did where the first show was, we did a couple of covers. We'd introduce ourselves to the school. We were a free assembly program. It was also a ministry, but not up front. It wasn't like this big, we love Jesus thing around your necks. It was kind of a seed planting thing. Anyway, so there's this part in the show where after 3 songs, I would go backstage and I'd put on this gear, nerdy glasses and stuff, and I'd push out this toy chest. And the whole thing was about this kid that had to do homework, but he'd rather watch TV. So then what the band would do would be they would do 18 theme show songs, and in the trunk there would be an element that would associate with that TV show. Like if it was Petticoat Junction, I'm putting on a petticoat. I've got the Batman mask on. I've got a bat. It's just all this silly, absurd stuff. And by the end of the show, we'd close out with a couple of songs and this really cool message. The first one we did was about when the Who concert happened in Ohio and people got trampled to death. Like it was about that whole thing. But and then we'd come back and do a ticketed night concert of all cover bands, and every now and then, we'd tell the kids, hey, by the way, we believe in Jesus, blah, blah, blah. It was real short. It wasn't this big deal. It was just like, oh, by the way, you can like play guitar and love rock and roll music and still have a faith system was kind of the point. But yeah, man, it was crazy. I did 2 years of that and then ended up moving to California because I met a girl up here. We ended up getting married. And then after a few years being a product manager at warehouse is when Toby decided to hire me at the Omni.
And is that the same time that you put together Soldier?
No, when I first got here, I'd just gotten out of a cover band in Texas that was making a lot of money. So this is like 83. We were making crazy money back then. And they were all ex-Showcase guys that were in Young American Showcase with me who happened to grow up in El Paso because I ended up getting them auditions, most of them, except for one guy or two guys. And after getting sick of playing the cover circuit, I decided to move to California and try and hook up with this girl and eventually marry her, and ended up living at a friend's house who was also in Showcase. And we just started a band called Rex, doing original rock and roll and playing the Chi-Chi Room quite a bit until Tambray decided to book us at the Mabuhay Gardens. And then after I got sick of doing that band, I decided to start Soldier with Marco and Rick.
How does Toby, who, by the way, was our boss and John Nady's wife, how does Toby get in contact with you to book a club? Because you didn't have any experience or anything. Did you know Toby, or how did that happen?
Well, I was in Soldier at the time, so we were playing the club quite a bit. And this is when they just owned the Omni. And I would roll into Toby's office, and I was one of the few cats she would let actually come all the way back because we'd always have these really cool conversations, just bullshitting. And I came back, and every time I'd go back, I'd see her calendar, and I'd see things on her calendar and go, out of curiosity, why did you book that band? And she'd go, well, we think that this is going to do this. I go, yeah, that's pretty cool, but here's another band you should look into. Because I was such a, I was going to San Francisco and all, Berkeley, and buying all these records and stuff. And I was, a big time music nerd as well as being a musician. And one day she just ended up going, you know what? You come in here and you offer us great advice. Everything that you've told us has been like, we've done well. So, we're going to hire you as a local buyer and a consultant to start out just to see how things go. So that's where I started, and just booking, the shit nights of the week and helping them to acquire bigger talent until eventually it was like I was an international talent buyer kind of guy.
It's funny, man. I look back at it was one of the greatest jobs we ever had because, man, we got health care. I'd never had health care, dude.
Right. Yeah.
They gave us health care. We got paid vacation. And we even got raises once a year, which was kind of weird.
Yeah. And then we'd have those rad Christmas parties where it was like all bets are off. Everybody could pretty much cut loose and, Yeah. And it was like, and then everybody in the heavy metal Illuminati was there at those Christmas parties. So, you got to hang out with people that you're normally working with. And you and I were always so busy, we didn't really have a lot of chances to hang out. So it was nice to have those moments with them where we could just chill and have a drink together or whatever.
Yeah, it was, and it was really some of that neighborhood in Oakland, man. We'd go to Genova's for the sandwiches.
Yeah, man.
Remember that place?
Yeah, I love that place. I still buy their pasta at Safeway, by the way.
Oh, you mean they sell pasta?
Dude, they still sell pasta in the Safeway frozen food section. I saw it like about 2 months ago, and I had to get it just because of old time's sake, and it was just the same as going to the deli and getting it fresh. It was amazing.
Dude, you and I would get that food, man, and just it was wild. I remember when we finally moved over to the offices, And then we had rehearsal studios there too.
Yeah.
Man, a lot of people are gone from that era. You know?
Yeah, dude. It's crazy.
It really is, man. It's funny to think about how these thrash bands, a lot of these bands, not just thrash, but like King's X is still out playing, Alice in Chains, Testament, Exodus,
Yeah.
all these bands. I mean, dude, we had all these bands all the time, and they're still out 30 years later.
Yeah. It's crazy, right?
It really is.
Well, and it's funny too because it's like heavy music has always been kind of shit on like punk, where it's like, oh, that's just a passing fad. It's like amazing that there's more longevity in classic rock and heavy music and thrash bands than pretty much any other genre, in my opinion. It's like there's a few country stars that have this legacy thing going on, but it's mostly rock and roll bands that still have the draw.
Oh yeah, if you look at all the 80s country bands, there's probably 3, 4 out there still touring, like Alabama.
Right.
Garth Brooks. Of course, Willie and the guys from the 60s that are still alive. But yeah, you're right, man. There's rock bands out there still making a living, no problem.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
It's insane.
Well, it's like, it was a trip too to me because it kind of works with my whole. I worked at Rock Bar for 2 years. That was the shortest lived club I've ever worked at. It was one of the most painful experiences I've ever experienced in this at all in a booking situation. At the same time, there were a lot of great shows that happened, and we booked. There were times when I was booking shows, and I had been out of. I had not been really seriously booking a room for a long time since the Pound SF. So when I started booking Rock Bar, it was shocking to me to see that some of those old formulas I had still worked. Like when we booked Uli John Roth at the Rock Bar in San Jose, it sold out that same day. Wow. And it was like, oh, so this does work. So then it was like, I did Saxon and Armored Saint and the Winery Dogs, of course, and Al Di Meola, and just reaching right back into my old bag of tricks just to see if it would work. And we had hugely successful shows. The problem with that venue was that the club owners themselves were spending more money than we were making, and they ended up being the demise of the venue itself. So, right. But I got Billy Idol to play for 300 people at the Rock Bar within 2 months of being open.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you and I, what do you think? We're there about 4 or 5 years?
I think it was 4.
Yeah, I think it was 4. I think so, because I got 4 calendars. I got like 3.5,
Yeah, like maybe 4, 4.5. And the ending was abrupt. Oh, it was like, what is going on, dude?
Well, I knew exactly. I tell the story all the time. I was in Cabo playing Sammy Hagar's Cabo Wabo.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I got a fax from you that said, "Hey, bro, we're closing next week." And I was like, "I'm on vacation. And I'm coming home to no job," and it was gone.
Right. Right. And, it's funny because me and Ann kind of had a quabble about who was going to give you the news. And I was like, look, I spend way more time with Dean than you do these days. Let me get at him because I don't want to, if I've got to tell him the last rites, I'm going to tell him myself.
Oh, my God. It was wild because all of a sudden it was gone. Now, once that was gone, you and I were out of work. I kind of booked the Cocadree for a little while.
Yeah.
What was it called before that?
New Morty's?
Morty's.
Yeah.
And then you went, where did you go, to Yachts, or did you not work for a while?
I worked at John Nady's wireless system as a salesman and ended up becoming one of his most successful salespeople. And when he told me that he wasn't going to take me off of just payroll and start giving me commissions, I went, okay, well then guess what? I'm looking for a new job. And then ironically, David Levine from William Morris got a hold of me at Nady Systems. He said, dude, where the fuck are you? Why aren't you booking a room? And I said, I told him what was going on. He goes, well, I want you to meet this guy named Yatsik at the Edge in Palo Alto. And I knew who Yatsik was because he used to call Toby and bitch at her about shows that we had stolen from him. But he wasn't very smart with booking anyway. Right. Great guy, but just wasn't a booking guy. And so then I went, okay, and ended up going over to the Edge one night and meeting Yatsik. And he hired me on the spot. And I went back to John Nady the next day and said, guess what? I have a new job. I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice. And he's all, well, we'll give you commission. I went, it's too late. I'm ready to go. So later.
Yeah. I forgot you went to Nady. Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, because all of a sudden now you're in the kind of the instrument world.
Yeah.
And that's also fun, just because at least you were still in music world,
Right. Well, and then one of my clients was Manny's in New York, so they would send me scans of all these pictures they had taken through fax, horrible, of Jimi Hendrix pedals and shit like that. Like, what? And I'd be on the phone with these guys for like an hour talking about musical gear that they had, and then and developing those relationships unknowingly, and then realizing, oh shit, I'm still a talent buyer because I'm sweet talking my ass through a deal I can't cash. So yeah, and that's what ended up happening. And then I started working at the Edge, and I was at the Edge for like 10 years. So
10 years. Now, so you were at the Edge kind of when rock kind of died, because all of a sudden the rave scene was really booming, and you guys started kind of doing raves, right?
Well, Yatsik had always done dance nights. That was where his money was. Right. He'd do a youth night on Sundays in the summer and sell, the place to have 1,200 kids in there. And it was no alcohol, just, fruity fizz drinks. Then we did $2 Tuesday where everything behind the bar was $2. And it was all the real stuff. So it was packed out and sold out. And then Friday and Saturdays were dance nights with Live 105. So when I went in there to book, I could book any night but those dates. And so then I ended up becoming the king of Thursday nights because I would book King's X or Thin Lizzy or UFO or, whatever on Thursday nights. And then eventually we started doing matinee shows on Fridays and Saturdays when it was big enough. But I mean, within 2 years, I was getting cats like Coldplay to come and play a private event for a radio station and Erasure. And that was probably my biggest moment because it was like I kind of had to fly on my own and ended up really going after the agents and kind of expanding what we were able to do there. It was pretty amazing.
That was a great room, right?
Yeah. Well, it was the old Keystone Palo Alto.
I know. That's what was so magic about it,
Yeah. And speaking of which, Bobby Sr., God rest his soul, before he passed away, when we changed back to back to the Edge after the Icon Jazz Club nightmare, I would have lunch with Bobby Sr. at the bar in the club during the day, and Yatsik, that was the only cat that Yatsik would go, hey man, you need to get back up here and start booking some shows. It was like when Bobby Sr. came in, he was like just super cool to him because he knew our history together.
God, we just lost Freddie a while ago.
Yeah, I just saw that, man.
Yeah.
Such a drag.
I mean, those guys, it's funny, they seemed old when we were, 30 years ago.
Yeah, but we were all in our 20s, so everybody was old to us back then.
Right? It's so wild. Yeah, now, the One Step, I remember some great shows there. Jellyfish,
Rollins Band.
Oh, yeah, Rollins.
Mercyful Fate. Slayer.
Oh, yeah. Mercyful Fate, dude. How great is that?
Yeah, man. I even got to do Mercyful and King Diamond at the Edge, but we did them at the Omni 2 years before we had the One Step Beyond.
We had King Diamond at the Stone, man. And I remember we went and he did the grandma wheelchair thing, and it didn't work. He's like, "Here comes grandma." And he just stood on the stage. I remember when he was at the Omni. That's when I met him backstage, and I was like, I think his name's Kim.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, Kim? That's not very evil. Oh, my God.
Do you remember, like, you weren't there then. This was before you got to working with me, but the first time we did Mercyful Fate, Toby knew that at that time I was like, full-blown born-again kid. And so, of course, she goes, hey, Jimmy, I need you to do me a favor and go backstage and take King Diamond's breakfast orders and go to McDonald's and fulfill it for us.
Yeah.
And she did it on purpose. I know she did.
Yeah.
And I looked at Ann, and Ann is trying not to laugh, right? And I'm like, oh, and I'm not very happy about this. But I'm like, all right, cool. So I get a notepad and a pencil, and I go rolling back. What I didn't know at the time was they were trying to work out something with their fog machines. So by the time I turned the corner to walk that long hallway into the gigantic dressing room that we had, the whole place is filled with fucking fog. And I'm looking, and I can't see anything. And as the fog starts to clear, of course, the first thing I see is King Billy in his aviator shades, head to toe in leather with the patches and the whole thing. He's all, can I help you? And I'm all, yeah, I need to get your breakfast orders. Here, write them down. I'll be back in a minute. And rolled out like all pissed off, like, ah.
King Billy.
Super funny. I'm going to do another short funny story. So I've always had look, I love Mercyful Fate. The thing that he puts out is not my bag, but whatever. I can still appreciate the music. I think they're a kick-ass band. In fact, when they played The Edge one time, he didn't show up for sound check, and the band ended up doing Live and Dangerous by Thin Lizzy.
Oh.
And I came down from the dressing room and grabbed a chair and sat on the floor and watched them do nearly the entire record, like double album. It was insane. Anyway, so he's playing The Edge, and I had heard reports he had a cold, so I would always go back and reset the dressing room so that when they came off stage, it looked like nothing was, like it was all fresh. All the garbage was gone. Like I made the hospitality trays look good, the chip bags, whatever was going on back there. And as I'm rolling to go out of the dressing room, King's in the hallway backstage coughing his lungs out because of this cold that he has. And he sees me and I see him, and we kind of know that we just there's no need to greet each other because we don't really like each other all that much. And so as I roll back, me being the smart ass I am, I turn around and I go, hey, Kim. And he looks at me and he goes, what? And I go, hail Satan, dude. He's taking care of that cold for you. Later. And he's just like, whatever, fuck you, Jimmy.
Hail Satan, man. Oh my God, that's fucking, I mean, like, I got a million stories.
Oh my God. Dude, do you remember? So, yeah, speaking of which, this includes you. And if you remember, I want you to tell the rest of it. But do you remember the day we did Devo and we were in the office?
I don't.
And they showed up? I know. So you and I are in the office, and we're both tripping balls because Devo's going to be in the house, and we sold it out in advance, and we sold way more tickets than we should have. Yeah. Knock on wood. Yeah. And all of a sudden, these fucking 5 cats come down in these Armani suits. Oh. And you look at me and you go, the fucking mafia just rolled into the fucking room? Yeah. And it took us like 10 minutes to realize it was fucking Devo. And they came to settle up. It was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon before they even sound checked. Whoa. They came to collect all their money. And you and I were just sitting there in awe, just going, what the fuck is going on right now?
Oh my God, I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, we were tripping about it.
That's a great Devo story. Oh my God.
Yeah, and then the night of the show, some brainiac decided to do a swan dive off of the balcony and ended up breaking his neck, and we had to halt the show while the ambulance guys came in and put that rig on the dude and wheeled him out of the house.
Whoa. Oh my God!
Yeah,
I'm unbelievable.
You're like all at the lower bar, and I'm off down there after the ambulance. The show's gotten back on board, and you come downstairs and y'all, what about that rummy? And I'm like, yeah, what about that rummy?
What about that rummy dummy? Oh, I remember one time we were downstairs in that downstairs office at the Omni, and there was a drive-by shooting. We were in another room or whatever, and Paul Rudd almost got shot.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, man. Do you remember the night that we had that big, like, it was like 15 bands or something? Your band was on it, Exodus was on it, my band was on it. And some, short Shattuck crew decided to drive by and shoot people in line with rubber bullets.
Oh my God.
And ironically, the reason that we were told to leave the Omni, or why John Nady went and gave them the pink slip to the building, the city, he was so pissed off, was they said that we were a bad influence on the neighborhood.
Oh
Like,
my, yeah.
we were the bad influence on the
We
neighborhood.
were the only thing in the neighborhood, man.
Not the crack, not the crack hotel across the street. You remember?
That's when that's when crack first kind of hits super hard. And man, it was gnarly, right? Like, remember that we would walk to go get lunch and it'd be like, whoa, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny though, because you and I always had a street sensibility. We never got hassled. I don't know if you remember this either from the Omni, but the first time we booked, what's that industrial band? Good Lord, I'm going to be so pissed. I can't remember their name. Anyway.
Nine Inch Nails?
No, it was,
Ministry?
Oh, fuck. I'm gonna have to Google now.
Do it.
Anyway, so this band, they come to play the Omni, and it's their first time playing there. I can't remember. They had a girl and a dude singer, and they had I can't find it. Anyway, so this numbskull decides to go out on the street and try and score coke.
Yeah.
After we had warned him, like, if you need something, we'll get people to get you what you need. Yeah. But they're not associated with the club, but we just, of course, know people because you had to do that back then. Yeah. And this guy goes out there and tries to score and ends up getting the shit kicked out of him.
Oh, my God.
And he comes back in and he's like all pissed off and he's, starting to yell at, staff members. And like, you and I rolled out of the office and basically had to chew his ass out about like, hey, man, we told you not to go out there. You went and did it. Like, fucking get up there and sound check and do your show tonight.
Dude, I can't believe it was only 4 years. It feels like 10.
Dude. Well, it's not to interrupt, but the thing I think that was funny was when you and I worked together in an office, there was so much humor in the office because I don't think we realized it at the time, but you and I were under a lot of pressure because we were open as many nights of the week as we could be open, God, yeah. Oh. So it was like, a stress reliever to be able to sit back there and just make fun of everything.
It was funny too, because I always felt bad because once that Omni neighborhood got bad, you had a hard time booking the Omni, and I had the Stone, which was a lot easier.
Yeah.
So to get 3 bands to play on a Tuesday at the Omni, it was just so hard. And then I'd always be like, hey, did you get a band for this shit? We'd have those booking meetings.
Yeah.
And I just felt terrible because I just knew the stress was double on you, Yeah,
I remember having a shit fit in one of our booking meetings, and you actually came to my rescue a little bit because I was so pissed off about the fact that Toby and John were just not understanding that people didn't want to be in the room. They were scared.
Yeah. And then you remember when John turned it into that full-on kind of, he had those guys come in and do the foam in different rooms and everything. Remember that?
God, I hated that, man.
That was nuts, right?
Oh, by the way, the band that the singer got beat up at was My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I remember Too Short did his video there, remember, with all the pit bulls?
Dude, I told that story on Facebook too. People didn't believe it.
Oh.
Remember they were shot at. It's on his first VHS release of
absolutely.
Too Short. Yeah, I remember that. I remember it ironically, a few weeks before that played, I knew what hip hop was, but I wasn't really paying attention, and you knew that. I think we were headed to Quickway or something ridiculous in your car. You had a Cadillac, a soft top Cadillac.
Yeah.
And you go, hey, Jimmy, are you ready to have your mind blown? And I'm all, fuck yeah. And you put in America's Most Wanted by Ice Cube.
Oh,
and we drove around to make sure, you wanted to make sure that I listened to the entire album, the first side, and then we got lunch, and then you drove around until we finished listening to the second side. So you had me as a captive audience.
Right.
And it was like that changed everything I thought about rock and roll, that album, to this day. And then so when Too Short did play the club, everybody who was anybody in the hip hop world was at that show backstage.
Of course.
And I went back and, kind of a wuss way rolled up to Cube and was like, "Hey man, can I talk to you for a second?" He's all, "Yeah, what's up, dude?" And I go, I'm one of the booking guys here, and I just want to tell you something you probably hear 1,000 times, but coming from me, it's going to, I hopefully mean a lot more. I go, I'm a rock and roll guy, and my buddy booking partner, Dean Del Rey, just turned me on to America's Most Wanted, and holy fucking shit, dude. He was like, yeah? And I went, yeah, dude. And he was like totally cool with it. And I was just like, okay, cool. And I just quietly scooted out of the room.
That shit was real back then, man. It was like,
well, remember the cops with the canines came in and the shotguns and made everybody leave, and people went into paddy wagons and
yeah. And then I remember we were doing hip hop on Sundays at the Stone, and I remember this one guy came in with a wheelchair with a blanket over his legs, and he got in there. He had a gun underneath the blanket, started shooting up the place, and that's when the SFPD said, "You keep doing hip hop, and we're just gonna raid you every night." ID checks.
We got into we actually got press in the pink section over that. I don't know if you remember. I think you had to do that interview because you were pretty much responsible for the Stone most of the time. And you had to talk to those guys. They were not about it back then. It was all bad.
Oh, they basically just came in and said straight up, "Keep doing hip hop, and we will raid you every night." Because they didn't want to be, they wanted to be cruising around, not working.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, God, what a wild time. So after you work at the, God, you booked your whole life. It was awesome. After Yatsik's place, where do you go then? To Rock Bar or what?
No, I was at Pound SF for a couple of years. That was also a bad move on my part. That was me leaving the room because the new owner was an asshole and I didn't want to work for him.
Well, Tony Karachi owned that, right?
Yeah, I ended up moving to work for Tony, but the guy who ended up taking over the edge was just not a cool guy. It's like, I got along with half of the club owners I worked with, and that's just the way it is. They see things different than talent buyers do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, they love when you win, and they hate when you lose, and they only talk to you when you lose. They never come in and go, "Dude, you murdered it with that gig.
Right.
Here's a bonus." Nothing.
Right. But they didn't realize, especially you and I knew this, there was a balancing act. You had to take some of these shows from these agents in order to get the cream of the crop. You kind of had to take a risk on doing a band. And sometimes you'd break good because that band would end up being gigantic. I mean, the first time I booked No Doubt, nobody knew who they were, and they were kind of a ska band at the time. And I had such a good working relationship with them that I was putting them on opening for Pato Banton at the Edge and paying them $250 to $500 and feeding them and giving them rooms, which is something they weren't even getting in Orange County at the time, their home stomping grounds. So when they got huge and Tragic Kingdom came out, I mean, they played 3 shows for me after they got stadium size, and they did it just as an homage to the fact that I believed in them early in their career.
That's so great, man. That's so great. The Pound was a strange club, right? It was I remember seeing Buck Cherry there on their second record. Did you book that?
No, that was right before I started booking there. Because I did Josh Todd when he went solo and did a show there with him.
But what a weird room. Did it used to be a Pound, actually?
No, it was, I think it was something having to do with fish, because it was right there on the wharf, and I don't know if they it was a fish processing thing or whatever the fuck. I never really got into the history of the venue with Tony, but man, that room is what put me off for booking for a while, because it was emotionally, that room kind of made me go, maybe I should be doing something else for a while.
As far as like no one was coming out and it was kind of over?
No, I mean, I'm not going to mince words. The owner was a gigantic pain in the ass. Most people that know him in the industry know that he's difficult to work with. It was a case of him not trusting me enough to take his hands off the wheel, which is the same thing that happened at Rock Bar. You have owners that are very hands-on and like helicopter parents. And I firmly believe that a real good talent buyer, somebody that's worth their salt, that you kind of have to take your hands off of them and let them do what they do, because they see the bigger picture. They don't realize that if you start working for somebody in May, it's going to take you 6 months to start drawing the numbers you need to do, because for, guys like us, it wasn't just we were booking our favorite bands. We were booking bands strategically that we may not have given a shit about, just because we were smart. It was like Tetris. You had to, one night you've got a metal show and you've got the metal kids coming in, and then you've got this thing with Terrence Trent D'Arby, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, it's this cross-platform thing, because now everybody in the heavy metal community that's a who's who are also Terrence D'Arby fans. Now their fans are so you're kind of like shaking the bowl every time you book a show and trying to mix and cross-pollinate these audiences to where you're constantly having a good draw with shows. You're kind of exposing yourself, bands, to people that they might not be aware of, as well as feeding the fuel of that genre-based fan base. So it's like, it's a weird kind of, it's almost like writing a song, you have to know where the hook is.
It's the Bill Graham formula, and no one's done a better job than him. He was the one that you and I and everybody in the Bay Area understood.
Agreed.
It doesn't matter race, color, style of music, or anything. Do you got a good song? And do you got a cool scene that people want to go to?
Yeah, Black Sabbath is playing with the Who, like,
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I stole that. You and I both stole that riff. It's like we refused to, when especially when Toby and John were allowing us to be a little bit more experimental, we weren't genre specific. There were some shows that we knew we had to stick to that genre. The audience was going to kill us. And there were some shows where we could get a little bit experimental and put somebody, how many times did we use Seven Karma Fishes on shows that they were not bound to,
Yeah. It is funny, man. It's funny because I think Seven Karma Fishes was on this thing right here. Here it is, Seven Karma Fishes and Wonderland, your band.
Nice.
And look at this, Fletch's band, Calling All Cars, all on the same bill.
You want to know it's a trip? I actually have the original paste up that the artist for Nady Systems, because we used to pay him to do our Wonderland ads for BAM, and I still have the paste up boards of that show in my closet.
Wow.
I have old contracts. I have old booking sheets. Yeah, I have a bunch of shit in my closet, dude.
Yeah. I got the calendars, and you could see the money deals.
Yeah, we'd write them down on the calendar so we knew what the money was. So there was no mistakes the night of the show, because you and I were there. We had to deal with that.
Absolutely. Oh, God, it's so crazy, man. So now what are you up to? Rock Bar closed, right? They were in San Jose and Reno?
Yeah, they went to Reno.
Yeah.
That was short-lived. I do graphic design for several newspapers, as well as freelance graphic design of like anywhere from album covers to ads for a barbecue place, pretty much all over the place right now. And I book Sofa Street Fair, which is a big event in San Jose every year that just recently went virtual. And there's a weird possibility that I might be getting involved in a nightclub fairly soon here that's about to start construction. So,
you mean booking?
Yeah, can you believe it? I feel like the dude from The Sopranos. Every time I try and get out, they try and pull me back in.
No, that's Godfather.
Godfather. Oh, well, The Sopranos quoted it too, so.
Yeah. Wow, that'd be wild, man. It's amazing how long you have been doing it. How many years?
I think I started booking at the Omni when I was 26, 27, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, till now, and I'm 58, so.
Jesus.
I don't know. Long time. Probably longer than I should have.
Yeah.
You know what's funny to me is, like, not to be an idiot, but getting back into the Rock Bar after being dormant for so long, I thought, I kind of second guessed myself. Like, is this the right thing for me to do? Am I going to, I don't want to go out on a no-win situation. I want to go out with a bang, if anything. And I kind of did, in spite of the place closing, because I booked shows there that should not have played that room. And I think that the art of talent buying is gone for the most part. The true art of talent buying, there's like, anybody can, work a certain room and know that they're going to just have acts falling all over themselves to play there. For the thrill of the chase was going after artists that should not have been playing. When I got Nine Inch Nails at the Edge to do it on the downward spiral, to me that was a bigger high than getting a bonus on my paycheck.
Oh yeah, like like when we had Kiss.
Yeah,
We're like, wait a minute, we're having Kiss. You and I grew up on Kiss.
yeah.
And we
I still have that contract writer.
Wow.
I still have it.
Wow. And also, like I said, those things that we really believed in, like, Bullet Boys. Here it is.
Oh, dude.
Book the Bullet Boys, and by the time in a 4 or 5 week period from when we book them to when they get to the club, they've absolutely exploded.
That is the secret to booking a show.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Knowing when that cycle was going to hit was where the true magic happened.
Oh, and you're just looking at it going like, oh shit, man, we got him, and the single is just going up the charts, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Or the time we did Alice in Chains and Extreme at the Stone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And an Extreme headline, and people were like, what? They didn't realize that, by the time Extreme played the Stone, More Than Words was just starting to simmer 6 weeks before they played there.
Right.
And we kind of both saw that like, oh, we need to book this tour.
Yeah.
And it's like, our friends were like, dude, Extreme and Alice in Chains, you've got to be out of your fucking mind. And that show ended up selling out so hard that we had to turn away several hundred people to come to that show.
Yeah, man, we had some sellouts, dude.
Yeah. You remember Trouble at the Stone when Rick Rubin showed up?
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. I remember crazy shit like Zodiac Mind Warp.
Yes.
Black Crows.
Yeah.
These bands all played the Stone and the Omni, man.
Yeah. I've got a show. I found an old ad Ron Quintana sent me the other day of the Black Crows opening for the Four Horsemen.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
What?
Remember I was going to audition for the Four Horsemen when the singer died?
Oh, yeah.
I told that story yesterday, man.
Nice.
I think the crown jewel was Paul Stanley, Omni.
Oh, dude.
Come on, dude.
So many flash bulbs going off that it looked like somebody turned on the house lights when he walked on stage in the dark. It was like, are you kidding me right now?
Yeah.
There's a bootleg of that out on YouTube somewhere.
Oh, there is?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, man.
And there's a lot of bootleg stuff out there on the Omni, dude. Do a YouTube search and you'll find some crazy shit out there.
Wow. That pit at the Omni, man, if you came out too far, you'd drop into the hole.
Yeah.
Holy shit. I used to love when these bands would carry their own sound. They would bring in a massive sound system into the Omni, and it would be like 125 dB, dude.
Yeah.
Remember, we would be like downstairs and it'd hit a note like gong, and we'd be like, are you kidding me? Oh my God. Shit would shake. We would be trying to talk on the phone. It'd be like, ga, 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 ga.
So we did a show that was supposed to be Wasp, Accept, and Metal Church at the Omni. Do you remember that day?
I don't.
And Accept couldn't play the show because the night before the band's lead singer and guitar player got into a fist fight on stage.
Oh, wow. Udo?
Udo. No. It was the new guy, David, whatever his name is.
Oh,
It was,
okay. Yeah.
So they just put out Russian Roulette or some shit. The album after that. And so at the time we had this chef that was kind of good guy. Yeah.
I remember that now.
And so we're talking. You and I had to run spotlights that night. By the way, that's a side story we'll get to in a minute. But It ended up that Toby had decided to fire that chef that night. All of a sudden, the Wasp tour manager is following me and Toby and you. And he goes, I've got a taser. Do you guys want me to take him out? And we're like, you and I are like looking at Toby just nodding. Yes, let him take this dude out before he swings on you, but we just want to see this good guy get taken out. And he ended up getting into his VW and driving away peacefully, but you and I were like, fuck.
Oh, I remember we ran spots. It was like 1,000 degrees in there.
Dude. Oh. And I got Johnny Rod the most active guy on stage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next to you're holding this super trooper that's putting off like 200 degrees of heat as it is, because back in those days they were not efficient at all.
No,
you're holding basic gigantic light bulb, hot metal casing and headphones on top of that, so you're sweating into your headphones now while you're getting directives from down below.
And full blown sold out with no ventilation.
Yeah.
Now, what happened to the Omni? John gave it to the city, and I think it's open now as some kind of it's kind of indoor flea market or something, huh?
Yeah, apparently they're thinking about turning it into a premium theater where you can order alcohol and food and all this other futsy stuff.
Wow.
You know what's weird to me is looking at those pictures on Facebook and looking at the room, and it's like when you go back to school and you go, wow, this is a lot smaller than I remember it being.
Oh, that's what I trip on. It seemed huge when we were young. Same with the Warfield. I opened for Bad English when I was a kid at the Warfield.
Yeah.
And then I did it doing comedy about 7 years ago with Russell Peters, and I walked down and I go, this place is puny.
Yeah.
It seemed like a fucking arena, and the Omni seemed huge, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed like way more than 1,000 people's worth of space,
Oh, my God, yeah.
It's weird, right? And it's like, I think, is that because you're so overwhelmed by that moment in time that everything is kind of a little bit bent out of sync? You know what I mean? I always wonder about that. Because like I said, when I went back to my high school after living up here for 15 years, I was like, wow, this is tiny.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think you're right. When you're young, a place like the Omni is kind of like, whoa, this is huge. We're playing a giant room.
Yeah.
And man, no joke. We would play gigs with 1,000 people.
Local shows. Yeah. Local shows with 1,000 people.
1,000 people, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Unsigned bands.
Yeah.
Hey, couldn't get in tonight. It was sold out. Like, what? Oh, my God.
Yeah. And we've had a couple of success stories, too, where some of those local bands played for us, and then they got a record deal, and then they were like national bands. It was like, geez, man.
Absolutely.
And the band I wrote, the band that wrote Little Black Backpack, I can't remember if...
T-Ride? Or...
No.
yeah, what were they called?
I can't remember. Something weird. But anyway, I put them on Dog Star at the One Step Beyond opening for Keanu Reeves' band. They got a record deal that night.
Wow. Yeah, a lot of bands, man. A lot of good musicians in the Bay Area. You still play guitar?
Yeah, I'm in a couple of bands. I'm in a band called Swamp Hammer that's kind of a rock and roll, bluesy, gritty kind of thing. And another band called He Who Greets with Fire, which is just kind of this weird, heavy experimental thing.
You still got that gold top?
I still have the gold top. In fact, Stephen Lynch, the guitar player from Swamp Hammer, is also a guitar repair guy. He's going to fix it this winter for me. I broke the headstock off of it.
Oh, damn.
Again. He's going to fix it so it doesn't happen again. So,
I tell you, man, it's really good to see you. I'm bummed you can't see me, but I miss you, and I think about you all the time, and I think about those days. And sometimes it tears me up, man. I just think, wow, we had some great fucking times. It's like,
dude.
It's like 3 lifetimes ago.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because it doesn't feel that long ago, but it kind of does. But it feels like, wow, I was only there for 4 years. I mean, it felt like a lot more than 4 years. Also, one other thing I want to say real quick before we go is that not only was it amazing to work with you, because you were one of the few cats I worked with that actually understood my process and I understood yours, and we were cool with getting out of each other's way when we needed to. But watching you come into this new thing that you've been doing, you've probably been doing it for like 20 years now, comedy and the podcast and everything, dude, it's fun to watch you be successful, dude. It's really cool. And I learned a lot of shit from you over the years, not just booking stuff, but life stuff. You always were a good friend to me and like a big set of ears whenever I really needed them. So, and I appreciate that, dude.
Oh man, I loved you, brother. I absolutely loved you. You were a solid human, and it was just great to sit across the room in that office at California Concerts and just us laughing our asses off
Yeah.
about dumb shit.
Yeah.
And just being so happy to go get a sandwich at Genova's or be able to go up to the AM/PM and get some Slurpees or something. It was just,
Yeah. Casper's hot dogs.
ribs, Flint's.
The ribs, Flint's, dude.
Remember Flint's?
I was just talking to somebody about that the other day, man. I miss that place so very, very much.
Dude, it was a house. You would pull up and they give you the ribs through the window.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
nuts.
You'd roll in and it'd be like the chicken sandwich was basically half a chicken, cut a chicken cut in half, thrown on 2 pieces of wheat bread, sauce poured over it, and a side of mashed potato salad and coleslaw. And it was like $3 a plate, and it was like more food than you could eat.
It's crazy, right? The Bay Area has changed so much.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought about moving out?
You know what? Honestly, if there's anything I could do, it'd probably move out. But
Right.
unfortunately, I'm not in a position to move anywhere right now. So,
Yeah.
and it's not because of the locale. It's just with the techie thing that's happened up here in San Jose, especially. It's just there's a breed of people here that they don't respect the area like, the townies do. It's just different.
Oh, it's way different.
Yeah, more angry.
It's way different, It's just kind of like there's too much money. Before, we had money and we had blue collar and we had poor and we all mingled amongst each other and it had this flavor and soul.
Yeah, it was like it was a soul kitchen for sure.
Yeah, and the rich people, they were self-made. They weren't just like, until that .com shit, the first wave that hit that closed like all the clubs,
Yeah.
That's when it all went downhill after that.
I agree with you 100%. But it was funny though too in our day when you and I were booking the clubs, we knew when money people came in and they would probably have just as good a time as the people that could barely buy a beer. It was like an interesting time then.
Oh, it was great.
So I want to remind you of one other story
Yeah.
about you before. So do you remember the night that we had to hold Vinnie Vincent's money?
I don't. Tell me.
And it was the night they broke up. The Vinnie Vincent invasion broke up that night.
I remember when they broke up. They were like fighting and shit.
Yeah. They're playing at the Omni. You and I were there, of course, and it was a hugely successful show. And you rolled up to me and you're like, Toby needs to see you in the office.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, shit. And he goes, and you're like, I'm going to go with you. And we went in there and Toby's like, oh, hey, I need you to do something for me, Jimmy. I know that you love this artist, so I'm just going to have you talk to the agent, that manager, about withholding their pay because John basically has a lien for $50,000 against Vinnie Vincent and all this wireless gear that Vinnie had gotten and never paid for.
Oh, shit.
And she decided to leave the club early and leave you and Ann there as my moral support.
Oh.
And I had to sit across, and I rolled out in the room, and I'd had an earlier conversation with Dana and Mark because I'd met them when they opened for Maiden at the Oakland Coliseum before I was even working at the Omni as a product manager. So we kind of had a little history together. And Mark rolls up to me and he goes, hey, man, I just want to let you know that this is going to be the last show. I mean, we might do one more show, but we're quitting and we're starting our own band called Slaughter. So here's my number. Get a hold of us. We want to play the venues.
Wow.
And this is before I had to go in the office with Vinnie Vincent. And you were like, you need a drink. And this is at a time I didn't even drink. And I think I had a drink.
Right.
And we rolled into the office and it ended up being just you and me. And Vinnie Vincent is the guy that decides to settle instead of the manager.
Right.
And he's across the stage from me. And I go, I'm sorry, Vinnie, but my boss has told me not to pay you. Here's some legal documentation. We have to withhold your guarantee. We've already gotten a hold of your agent and your management and let them know. And they're aware of it. And he's all, why are you doing this to me?
Didn't he start crying?
He started crying. He's all, why are you doing this to me? I can't believe you're doing this to me. I'm about to lose my band. Like they just told me they want to quit. And now you're telling me I can't have my money. This can't be real. Please tell me this is a joke. And sat there for 25 minutes whining with me until eventually I had to go, you need to get out of the office.
Wow.
I'm not paying you.
Wow, man.
And it was one of the hardest moments I ever had in my life.
Yeah, like our favorite.
But you were there,
and
you're just like behind him, just like all, oh, like you could tell that you're real like, oh, fucking.
It's funny because if you think about that, that's kind of a the Vinnie Vincent motif. Like he just did that for years.
Yeah.
I heard he was selling guitars, took deposits, never gave him. He sold box sets and never sent them. And
Yeah. So it was like $500 to join his forum online.
yeah, wow, man.
Do you remember when Bill Graham called the office, pissed at us for doing that Jaco Pastorius tribute show?
I do remember him.
Toby, well, what are you gonna do? Break my legs? Click. You and I.
Yeah.
Oh.
Man, we had some battles with the BGP world.
Dude.
Wow.
Well, you know what was cool though? I told that story on Facebook the other day too. And what was cool was you and I went to a show at the Warfield like not even a month later, and we saw Bill, and you and I started to like try and find a way to get around him with not being seen because we thought he was still hot from that show.
Yeah.
And he ended up saying, "Oh, hey, you two, come here." And I'm like, "Oh fuck!" And we roll over to him. He's all, "You know what? I like you two guys, but you know, fuck that Toby and John Nady," and gave us drink tokens and sent us on our way.
Oh.
And you and I were like, "That's so amazing. He's still cool with us, but he hates them. That's killer."
Oh my God. You know what's funny? Is I love Toby, man. She was great.
Me too. Yeah, she was awesome.
She was awesome, man. I love it when she would buzz me. Beep, beep, beep. Dean, Toby, can you come in the office for a minute? I'd be like, oh no.
It's like going to the principal's office.
It was. I'd go and she'd go, what's going on? This show did horrible. You said it was going to be huge. What happened? And I'd be like, oh, well, there was a giant show at the Cow Palace I didn't know about. Oh, well, who was it? I would just be like, oh, no.
You and I would fucking sometimes, we would think up stories before one of us was paged into the office.
Totally.
And we hated it when we were pulled in as singles because then it was like we couldn't play the story correctly. You know what I mean?
And then she'd be like, why is this band Roxanne getting $5,000 a night? I've never heard of them. They're playing all 3 clubs.
Right. Oh, and then I'd be something like me piping in going, yeah, well, you didn't know who, Pearl Jam was either. And we still lost that show to the I-Beam and they did 3 nights. So now what? What you got?
Yeah. Oh, my God. I miss you, man. I'm dying to see you, and I hope this virus ends one day.
Yeah.
I could be up in the Bay, and we could sit down and do a part 2, and just because we're going to finish this and then have a million stories, you know?
You're right.
It's so true. But, man, I miss you, and I'm glad we're both alive, and those were some incredible times, dude.
For sure.
Do you have any websites for your band?
Swamphammer.com right now is the only one that's active. Yeah. Okay. Go there and check it out.
What if people want to hire you for some graphic design?
I have Evangelist Design on Facebook. It's EVANGE7ist.com. And they can get at me there for graphic work. I do everything from, corporate businesses to heavy metal album covers. So
right. I'm dying to have you see some comedy. Are you a comedy guy? Watch comedy?
Dude, are you kidding me? I watch all your shit on YouTube and stuff. Of course, I know what's going on, man.
That's great.
Yeah, I'd love to see you live, for sure.
All right, man. Well, also, do you got my number? I'll email you my number.
Please do.
And let's stay in touch.
Yeah, and I'll let you know when I'm down in LA because Swamp Hammer plans on going down there as soon as we can.
Oh, absolutely. I'll come down and I'll promote it on the podcast.
Cool, man.
I love you, dude.
I love you too, brother.
Have a good one, and what are we on? Oh, we're on the weekend. I have no idea.
It's I think it's Saturday. Is it Saturday or Sunday? Saturday. Right on.
Thank you for doing this, man.
You're welcome, man. Thank you for having me.
All right. There you guys go. Jimmy Arceneaux, one of my long-lost friends right there. It was great to sit down with you, buddy. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and leave a review and check it out on YouTube. Thank you, Jimmy.
Thank you, sir.
See you, buddy.
Have a good night, man.
Later.